Morning, YouTube. Poppy here, sitting on the back deck. We're at 5th of July, not the 4th. Yesterday was fireworks day. Sun coming up, promising to be another hot one today. Maybe some rainstorms here in Western Carolina. Wanted to do something a little different today. I had promised when I got this can a month ago that I would do this. Going to open some Cornell&Deal Yorktown that was put down in 2011, and had promised to contrast it with some Yorktown that I got back in April of this year. Not really a taste test, just a kind of taste comparison to see what the difference is going to be 7 years later, which I thought made kind of interesting. What is Yorktown? Yorktown, according to Pipes and Cigars website, is stoved red Virginia combined with bright flue cured, then heat treated, again, assuming that means stoved, and then combined with red Virginia ribbon. So, in other words, it's Virginia. Now, I'm not a big Virginia smoker, especially at this time of year, which is why I'm doing this in the morning. I tend to puff a little briskly for Virginia tobaccos. I'm going to pour a little on the thing here so we can get a comparison look in a minute. I puff a little too vigorously, I think might be a kind way to put it for myself. And this is a hot time of year, and I really don't need hot burning tobacco. So while a lot of guys go to Virginias at this time of year, I pretty much stay with my English and my Balkans. They slow me down a little bit. So anyway, here you see how old this tin is. I mean, you look at the coloring. They have a white is yellowed. Um, Not to mention that it's Cornell&Deal Incorporated, Morgan in North Carolina, and they haven't been here for I think 3 or 4 years. But just, I don't know if you can tell, we got a little bit of a bulge going on. So let's top off. Can you hear it? Can't really hear it either, can you? So anyway, let's crack this thing open. Let's see what we get here. Ah, heard the hiss. Pull this top back. Isn't this exciting? It's like we're looking back into the past. 7 years. History here. Selected hand-blended tobaccos for the discriminating smoker. Cornell&Deal Incorporated Vintage Blends. I'm going to pull this out of here. And this is what it looks like in the tin. Okay, compared to what this looks like. You can see that one. That's why we're going to put some out here on the table. First stuff, forgetting my etiquette on how to do this stuff. What's the tin note or the jar note on this one? To me, it's real grassy, even with all the stoved reds, which to me, I usually think of stoved reds giving us something a little more deep and robust. It's real grassy. A little bit of sweetness to it. 7 years later, not nearly as grassy, of course. More earthy. Probably about the same amount of sweetness. Put some on the thing here. Certainly it's drier. Interesting, it seems, and this is just off the top here, but that the ribbon is a broader ribbon cut than what I've got on the current vintage. And of course, clay tasting pipes that put a little bit in here and just fire up and see. I didn't want anything that had ghosted from some prior blend. And each one of them gets their own. This is a little darker. I can still get the grassiness that I get in the new stuff, but it's obviously matured by 7 years. It's a deeper note now, more subtle, and it does appear the tobacco has darkened some. And yeah, the cut is a little bit different though. It's chunkier. It's got maybe some pieces in it. You could say. Um, and I mean, 7 years later, they changed locations. They may have changed the way they did some of this stuff. I don't know if the blend has changed or not. Hard to tell. But now we've cracked that thing open, and we're going to burn a little bit of it and just see what the palate tells us in the nose. So I'm going to have you along with me while I smoke a little bit of both of these. And of course, to clean my palate in between. So let's fire this one up and see. This is the current vintage, or the got this in April of 2018. Light, sweet. Not as grassy as I would have expected smelling it in the jar. Actually, a really good smoke. Which is funny because after smelling it in the jar, as grassy as it smelled in the jar, I was truly prepared not to like the current vintage. It was just too bright for me. I like something a little more earthy. But once you actually start smoking it, I guess the red Virginias, the earth notes in there start coming through. Smooth, definitely. And I'm getting the expected sweetness from the Virginias on my tongue. Yeah, when I originally bought the Yorktown, I hadn't bought it to smoke directly like this. Was thinking, yeah, I'm going to play with some blends, mix. I got some Latakia and some Barrique, and I like the combination of tobaccos in the Yorktown to blend with other tobaccos. But it smokes well by itself. It really does. Like I said, I was prepared not to like it, given the grassiness and the kind of high brightness of the jar smell. Probably still not something I'd smoke a lot of during the summer, just because of my particular patterns of how I puff. Yeah, you guys would like a Virginia. Try that. And in the interest of keeping this under 3 hours, I'm going to clean my palate, and then I'm going to jump over here to the vintage Yorktown, 4/12/2011. Let's see what history tastes like. deeper, obviously, richer, more complex. I'm getting sweetness. I'm getting the deeper notes of the reds. And obviously, as they've changed and matured, darkened, we're adding to the quality of the flavor. I'm noticing just looking, and I don't know whether I can show this to you, after I have gotten the tobacco, not really going to be able to see it. It's once I've loaded my pipes here, the vintage is noticeably darker. It didn't seem to be quite so much in the tin, but sitting here on my little white paper plate, it is noticeably darker. Which accounts for where some of that corresponding richness comes from. Yeah, definitely more complicated on the palate. Um, yeah, it's good smoke. Um, so I guess either my recommendation would be to find you some uh, Yorktown that was tinned in 2011. Good luck with that. I just stumbled across this. Or buy you some Yorktown and put it up. Um, if you're into cellaring and aging tobaccos, this is one that's, and you're a Virginia smoker. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this to be one to go in your cellar, and you know, it doesn't have, you don't have to wait 7 years, obviously. It's just, that was the age of the can when I found it and bought it. So get some and put it up. I think this Yorktown in my jar will go on my cellar shelf. Um, like I've said about jars in the past, I'm not averse to cracking one open and grabbing a bowl from now and again, and returning them to the cellar, so to speak. Um, so I think that's what I'll do with this. This is now that I have a 2 ounce can of vintage Yorktown to go ahead and finish, because I need to get it in a jar today. I certainly don't want it getting any drier. Although the dryness doesn't affect the quality of the smoke here. Let me say that too. It's not burning any hotter or burning any faster. I'm having to relight just as often as I normally do when I'm talking. But it's definitely worth cellaring. Definitely worth getting some age on it, as we would expect. You know, Virginia's mature nicely. Um, so anyway, yeah, if you can get your hands on the smokes and matured Virginia all the time, then you'd be in good shape too. That's just going to be hard to do. Anyway, running on to close to 15 minutes here, and I've got 2 pipes worth of tobacco to finish smoking, and need to get some vintage Yorktown into a jar. Thanks for stopping by. All you quiet friends out there, thank you, and keep visiting. Subscribe, people, like 71 people now, I think. Thanks again so much for being a part of this ride, journey, whatever we want to call it. I hope everybody has a good remainder to their week, a good upcoming weekend. We're actually forecast to be in the 70s here on Saturday, which just seems really bizarre after all these 90s. And I don't know if there's a front coming through. Anyway, I'll leave that to the meteorologist to figure out. I'm just looking forward to it. I'd much rather see 78 than 95. Um, so anyway, let me finish here, and peace to you all, and be kind.